Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Friday, May 3rd, 2024. First thing that we are getting in our 5-card spread for today is we have here our moon card. I'm not surprised to see this. Pluto is now in retrograde, I think until October. So what we're effectively seeing to a certain extent is we've just got, I need to stress this, like what did we see that was occurring during that Scorpio full moon process? We saw a lot of that clarity coming to the surface, right? A lot of that openness, a lot of that honesty. That was either going to feel like honesty with the self or honesty in the circumstances and situations around you. But here's the thing. Even when we come into those points and spaces of honesty, what happens often when we come into that space of honesty? That clarity sheds light on spaces and places that we don't have clarity. And we see that a lot of the energy right now is building a lot of this path work right now in moving forward with a little bit of that wait and see approach. It is having a different impact depending on where you're in alignment on the frequency cycles right now. Masculine and feminine energy. What we see here in the heart of the divine union frequency and the energy that is coming into the divine union frequency. A lot of the path work that we've seen over the last week having to do with navigating the places and spaces of unknowns within the self, right? We've been recognizing and identifying that point of observation in terms of recognizing and seeing things within the other that others don't typically see. That is what we truly build towards when we're in that energy of the divine union. Being able, the ability to be able to express into that intimate world. What happens when you see the sides and parts of the other that others typically don't see? That is almost that moment of building that internal life between your energetic frequencies. So we see even now, this is a lot of that energy that is like learning to navigate and learning to inhabit not just what is shown on the surface, but all of those parts of the self that others don't typically see and identify and understand. Masculine and feminine energy right now, one of the beautiful things that we see is occurring is that moment that even seeing those points, identifying those cloudy areas, if you will. That is that moment that almost feels like that sense of building deeper into the heart of the energetic intimacy, because that's almost that moment, like what happens when we see the hurts and the wounds that we carry in the other, even if those are sensitive spaces and places. That's almost that moment that feels like that amplification point in the sense of feeling the sense of discovering new aspects of the other that you didn't even recognize were there. That can feel to a certain extent when moving in that energetic space of compassion and love. It almost feels like that moment that creates that sense of wonder and exploration in the other. Because that's that moment that as long as we don't allow that to be a trigger point, as long as we approach those states and spaces with compassion and curiosity, there's that moment that even there's that sense of like spaciousness that is being created, particularly for the energy coming into the divine union frequency of the unknown in the other. Potentially even recognizing a bit of that caution or trepid, like that caution tape, if you will, like showing each other one another's maps, identifying where they are. That creates, even in those moments of not knowing the other, a moment of energetic excitement, of energetic possibility. Because that's that moment. And what is this energy saying to one another? Even here, it's not the fact or the space of someone needing to be energetically perfect to come into the divine union frequency. It is that moment of knowing the spaces and places that you are not, right? And what did we see was happening to a certain degree for a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now? Showing each other one another's maps. Right? Showing each other those spaces and places and saying, this is sensitive for me. This is where this happened. This is where that happened. I don't talk about this. We don't go in there, right? This is that moment of looking in those ways and spaces that, again, it doesn't create that sense of being triggered. It doesn't create that sense of taking that as an internal wound and saying, why won't you let me in that space? That is that moment that almost feels like that amplification of expansion, even in that moment. Because that is that moment of almost unpacking and understanding where those wounds, where those scars, where those energetic injuries occurred. For masculine and feminine going through that process, coming into divine union right now, this is almost that moment of continuing again, that like process of like continual unfolding, even in recognizing and seeing those spaces and places that others don't typically see. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in the heart of the divine union frequency, you already know each other's spaces and places on these maps. You've had these for some time. You share this energetic experience. What is happening right now for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency? This is that moment that potentially may feel like you're bridging and you're forging through in some of those spaces and places, all based on the sense and sensitivity of feeling the sense of security and safety of the divine union frequency. And what's beautiful about that energy is it's not one where you feel like you're energetically leaning on another, like you need someone to energetically do that work for you. These are energies that are navigating in that moment of alignment, doing so energetically together for the sake of feeling that expansiveness of the process, in feeling the sense of companionship that you experience with a counterpart that you know is doing or is focused, energetically focused on navigating the work in the same energetic way. While for masculine and feminine energy in separation right now, for a lot of that energy that is bridging, forging through new energetic connections, coming out of a lot of healing cycles right now. And this is either potentially feminine energy, being able to move some energetic hurt outside of the self, which allows for that facilitation of being able to energetically heal, being able to carry something in a way that allows that ability to move forward, not just holding on to the bitterness of the past or the anger or the sadness, but almost transforming that place that may have created a boundary, those same wounds that we're talking about, making that create the energetic standard. Like marking those spaces on your own map to a certain degree and saying, I'm going to recognize that this is now a part of me that I will take with me, but I'm not going to let that be a place that feels like I'm crumpling my own map, holding on to it too tightly. I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to lay it out for others to see in a way that feels like it's creating that energetic standard, almost articulating, finding a way to articulate that to the other that allows for that ability of forging through and sending and building new energetic connections, because that is that moment that feels like the energetic lesson that helps one understand oneself, as opposed to something that feels like you're recovering from or coming into that state or space of feeling like you're carrying the wound in the first place, right? These are not energies that are forgetting the past. They're letting that moment or that meaning come into the point to be able to energetically empower you going forward. While for masculine energy right now, that same work, being able to let go of regret, if these are spaces and places that you're holding on to some anger or resentment, maybe even feeling some of that anger and resentment within the self, recognizing that anytime we have to look back on the self and we see something within the self that now makes us angry that we wish we could change, that is that gift. That is that moment of empowerment. That is that moment that feels like the expansion point, because that allows for the possibility of doing something in a better way going forward. Letting that moment almost serve as a moment of saying, I was off of my own alignment. I was out of my own energetic standard. That's not me, right? Because that's like almost what we feel with some of that regret space. That's not me. That moment that we feel energetic regret, that is the moment that allows us to do something energetically different. And that energy is creating that state or space of the new energetic connections, taking a little bit of that energetic slowness, that wait and see approach, if you will, in relationality to seeing either, again, moments of reciprocity and moments of healing now, where someone is able to come towards someone and say, I'm not just coming back towards you because I energetically miss you. I'm coming back towards you because I understand and recognize I was out of my alignment, and now I know what to do. Now I can look back on something, and now I realize what I was doing. Now I look back on something and I realize that correction point. Like that is that moment that allows for a bit of that wait and see, or these are new energies that are making connections by observing the past and saying, I wasn't energetically perfect, but I'm working on getting better. I see my own, like parsing out, like what was your responsibility and what was not, building energetic connections by almost showing each other those maps, if you will. And we see even now, it's not that that energy is just moving full tilt into things right now, but they're utilizing a lot of potentiality, a lot of possibility. There's a little bit of that paused breath energy today as we see that there's a lot of that like new energetic life coming into something, but there's still a little uncertainty about where something might go. Second card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here the Devil card in its reversal. What's really beautiful about that is the fact that we see that for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, this is feeling like a lot of energy in separation that is going through a lot of that energetic healing process. Because what we see and recognize right now for a lot of the energy that's in separation, what we are identifying is that this is that moment that allows for that point of energetic expansion. Because this is that point that we see that's that moment. Like, what happens when we're able to articulate to another our experiences? What happens when we're able to articulate and take accountability for what was within ourselves to change versus what was something that was external to ourselves that we experienced? That is that moment that even in our experiences of the past, we start to build those new energetic connections, because that's that moment that allows for that sense of that being the energetic bridge that creates that sense of healing. So we see even now that this is either a lot of energy in separation that's making those new energetic connections, having that moment of almost feeling that point of recognition of saying, oh, you had something like that happen similar. You are also going through the same process of me. And that's that moment that, again, these are energies that are feeling even in separation right now, building new bridges in relationality to new energetic connections that feel like you've experienced not exactly the same thing, but things that you're perceiving in the same way, because you're on the same journey. You're in that moment of identifying and recognizing that there's that sense of navigating forward in a way that you don't know exactly how to do so, right? Because that's what happens when you break out of an energetic cycle. These are energies that may be even feeling like saying to one another, you found me at an energetic low point, right? Because that's almost like what it feels like. You found me at an energetic low point. It's like, and the other energy saying, it doesn't seem like I found you at an energetic low point. It seems like I found you in a moment that you're healing from something that was energetically low. You're healing through something that was difficult, right? And so we see even now that a lot of that energy coming into those new connections, this is either that moment of recovery, that moment of healing, someone being able to bring something forward that allows for that sense or state of saying there's something here that can be energetically different. Or these are energies right now, but taking that wait and see. These aren't energies that are just assuming that is the case, because why? Articulating upon something that can change is different than being able to facilitate on it. You can articulate on recognizing what you need to change all you want. Being able to actually facilitate on it is a very different thing. So even for those energies that may be going through some kind of restoration process right now, there is that energetic slowness that is occurring to a certain extent, taking that wait and see approach, if you will. Or these are new energetic connections that are starting to form from a space or place of feeling a lot of alignment and relationality to what you're experiencing on the healing journey. Masculine and feminine energy, what occurs when you're coming into divine union? It's not that you have to be energetically perfect. In fact, what we see here that's really beautiful is that for a lot of the energy coming into divine union right now, that recognition point of seeing something, seeing those parts of the other that they don't typically show, that is that moment that almost like even here we see that these energies, they're a little conscientious about it. They're sensitive about it. That's what we do when we carry wounds. What happens when we carry wounds? We are sensitive about the wounds we carry. So what do we see and identify that is occurring right now for a lot of the energy that is experiencing that? That sense of affirmation of saying to the other and saying, I don't see anything for you to be sensitive about. I don't see anything, and this is almost the energy acting as a clearer mirror to one another, especially in those bent modalities, and almost saying to a certain extent, whatever this is that you're energetically carrying, I don't see that as the energetic negative. I don't see that as something within you that needs to change. That almost seems like something that you are energetically healing from. Right? And so that ability of holding something for the other with that sense or that internal desire to say and see something within the other and say, I'm going to help heal that. That's different than looking towards someone and saying, I'm going to change them. I'm going to facilitate changing them into the person or the thing that I want them to be. That's the energy that looks towards another with compassion and says, I see something that they're carrying that looks like it is a burden. It looks like it is painful. It looks like it is creating pain for them. And it is my aspiration to try to remove and to heal that. While for masculine and feminine energy, that is in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is that energy taking those steps forward in this way. This is that energy that's going through, like they're just going right into the cave, if you will. They're going into those spaces and places with one another, all for the sake of saying, like, wanting to remove that energetic pain, wanting to come into that place of saying, if there's a space or state that you feel weak, I want to make you energetically strong. And all of that is for the sake of mutually healing, because these energies in the heart of the divine union frequency, they see the best in the other. They hold that space of the other's highest desire and aspiration of self. And that's almost the energy that looks to the other and says, I want to help you get there. And I'm not doing that for the sense of my own self. I'm doing that for the sense of you, right? That is the gift of the compassionate energy. It's that moment that allows you to like go and move forward and do the things that are hard to do. And you're not just doing them solely for your own self. You're doing them for the sake and the self of the other. And these are energies that are counterpart in that journey. And that's why it feels like even that moment, the exception of the rule, being able to do something that is energetically difficult, but also something that is energetically healing. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here our Ace of Swords, and it's reversal. It ain't easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's vulnerable work. Right? It requires a level and degree of vulnerability. What's happening for a lot of the energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency? We see even here that for a lot of this energy, that ability of like energetically putting your guard down, there's that moment we keep seeing, like when you're navigating something that you haven't navigated before, when you're navigating an old wound, when you're navigating an old hurt, there's that uncertainty in relationality to how you're able to react to things, right? Because that's that moment of knowing. We're talking about something that is hard for me to talk about. We're navigating something that is very sensitive. We're addressing something that I've got a lot of like triggers and wounds around. So even that moment, it's like it creates that sense or that degree of energetic caution. But what's happening for a lot of the energy that's able to do that? Having that moment, feeling that energetic safety that almost says, and it feels like that exception to the rule forming and saying, typically, I'm not able to talk about these things. Typically, I have hurdles talking about or doing these things. But we see even now that that's the energy that is going through that slow process of almost feeling that sense of saying, like, does it still cause that? And someone being like, no, it doesn't anymore, right? Because that's that moment that, again, non-reactivity to those spaces and places. Like that is the moment that feels like the energetic breakthrough point. That is the success that doesn't come from activation. It comes from that moment of being able to energetically surrender. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into the divine union frequency, this is that modality that we've been seeing about being able to hold the energetic wound of another, but not in the way that you yourself would aspire and desire to do it. This isn't energy that's like, I know what I would do with that. You know what I mean? No, this is the energy that's like holding the wounds of the other, but being conscientious about how they're being asked and desired to be held. The opposite of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency. Because this is that moment of someone like handing you their egg and saying like, please don't run with it. Like that's a moment like, I want to run with it, but okay, I won't. Right? Because that's that moment, that ability of seeing that the other is conscientious in being able to energetically carry something in that way, being able to articulate upon it, even the act of articulating on it, that discernment moment. Both of these energies in the divine, coming into divine union, the counterpart energies, feeling the sense of security and stability. And it's intriguing because it's almost that moment that we see that it's either the ability to do something in the way that someone would aspire or desire, or the ability not to do something in the way that one would aspire and desire. Because we see even now the feminine energy is more about that articulation of it, wanting to talk through something, wanting to almost have something of talking around the thing that may have caused the energetic wound. While masculine being more in that point of potentially wanting to keep some energetic distance from something entirely. So we see even now that sense of energetic safety forming in the relationality of being able to be energetically mindful with something, but also talking and looking towards that place or space in the future where you're already aspiring, desiring to potentially heal something in a way that may require a little bit of navigating into a place or state of energetic difficulty. The energy in the divine union frequency, which is already doing that. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, one of the things that we're seeing right now has to do with, again, a lot of that energy building upon new energetic connections by confronting what you may have had a hard time confronting before. Look at this. This is a lot of energy just going straight to the heart of something to a certain extent. Because what we see is that for a lot of masculine and feminine energy right now, in separation, I don't even want to say that this energy feels like it's in separation right now. Because this is the energy that's looking back on anything that felt like it was energetic separation with some kind of new point of energetic clarity, right? And that's either coming into that state or space of recognizing in the self and saying, like, I wasn't in my alignment. I wasn't in a place or space. I'm carrying energetic regret on something that I did or did not do, which would almost say, like, I can understand and see what requires that point of energetic repair. Or this is energy that says, I was carrying a wound within myself. I was trying to change something. I was trying to facilitate healing on something that I now realize was impossible to energetically heal. Like I was sitting there trying to put healing on something that did not desire to be healed. We were in different alignments. We were on different paths. So we see even now, like even that articulation around circumstances or situations, being able to build that energetic bridge, almost articulating on the things that you couldn't see within the self or outside of the self at the time that you were energetically experiencing something. That is what is helping now build these new energetic bridges. And those are either new pathworks, new energetic connections, or they're restorational moments. And there's a lot of vulnerability there, right? There's a lot of just trying to take your armor off and being completely honest, because how else can we build an authentic connection if we do not approach each other from that sense or space of a complete and total energetic honesty? How else will we know if we are in alignment if we don't do so? Fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is, we've got here our 4 of Wands in its reversal. And it's hard. That's difficult energetic work. It's frustrating. Because we see even now, like a lot of this path work is one that almost feels like it's articulated upon some sense of energetic disappointment. But look what's happening for a lot of the energy in separation. A lot of that energy in separation, almost utilizing that path work of articulating the energetic disappointment in something not going the way one would have aspired or desired something to go, that allows for those new energetic path work to come through, right? That's almost that moment of articulating about what occurred, having that moment, having that ability to see something and say, I can see something now that I couldn't see. I could see something, and this is the new energetic connections that we see, that either looking back, building those new energetic connections by saying, I did something I moved in a way that I no longer would move, or saying, I didn't see something that I now see. A lot of this energy building upon new energetic connections from that state or space right now, or a lot of energetic restoration that is potentially occurring in that energetic context. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is coming into divine union, this is that modality that feels like that sense of seeing something within the self or seeing something in the other that you're hoping to energetically change, right? Because this is almost looking at the wounds that you're bringing into the divine union frequency and saying, you've been carrying that for a long time, right? You've been carrying that for a long time. And what is the energy? That's the energy that's almost creating that state or space. Are these energies moving away from each other because of those abandonment wounds, because of those triggers? No, because the way that they carry it is similar, that they carry it within. They don't let those wounds injure those without. They don't subject others to their wounds. They articulate upon them. So that we see that for a lot of the energy, looking at that, this is almost looking and finding those sensitivity points in the other. And that moment, that observational point, if you will, it's almost that moment of saying, we will be mindful of this. I will carry this for you. I will utilize this pathwork of discernment, but I hope one day to energetically heal that, right? Because that's what we do, and that's what we see when we see energy that brings wounds in from outside the divine union frequency. We don't want to change them on our own timeline, but there's that aspiration and pathwork of purpose that says, I hope one day we can heal it. But the connection does not facilitate or does not require, or does not demand that it get energetically healed, right? That is that moment that, again, that's the ability of desiring what's best for another, but almost not making that desire contingent on the energetic connection. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in the heart of the divine union frequency, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. A lot of the energy that's in the heart of the divine union frequency doing the opposite right now. Doing the opposite. This is confronting. This is a lot of confronting those wounds. This is a lot of addressing it. But again, this isn't energy that's like energetically forcing that point of change, right? This isn't energy that's saying that point of facilitation and saying someone has to energetically change. This is more of that moment of looking at something that you may have carried for a long point of time and almost articulating and saying, do you think you're ready to let go of that burden? Is there this possibility here of energetically healing this? And even now, taking a little bit of that wait and see approach to a certain extent, because even in those moments or in those modalities, being able to identify, and again, having that point of doing that together, that feels in a way like that point of empowerment, because we see that for a lot of the energy right now in the heart of the divine union, there's something about that energetic work. I need to stress this. It's not that the energy is leaning on one another to do that work, right? It's not that it's depending on the external energy to facilitate that energetic path work, but it's almost saying without you present, without your energetic support, without that energetic encouragement, because these are energies that are moving into spaces or places that would typically be hard for them to go, but feeling the energetic support of those around them that allow them to move forward in that way. Like that is that energetic feeling of compassion and confidence that we receive when we recognize that we're not energetically alone. So we see even now that for a lot of the energy doing that, it almost feels like the extension or amplification of compassion and a little bit of that wait and see approach, because it's almost that moment of saying, I never could energetically do that before. I never felt that level or degree of compassion. I never felt that level or degree of support. So we see even now, like that feels like even now, it can feel a little, it can almost feel like it triggers the trigger, if you will. Right? Because that's that moment of saying, like, if you didn't have that, like that might be where a lot of that energetic trigger was created in the first place, right? Fifth card in our 5-card spread for today is the Fool card. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is in the divine union frequency. Like that's the thing, and this is that modality that we're seeing to a certain extent that almost amplifies that sense. And I need to stress this: if there's a slowness to this energetic frequency, it's because this is a type of path work that requires that level or degree of energetic slowness. This is a type of path work that's like a bit of that steady as you go, if you will, right? Because what happens when you're navigating something that is energetically difficult? What happens when you're navigating something that would typically trigger you? What happens when you recognize and identify and you know that you're navigating a space that often creates that volatility within you? You move very conscientiously. You move with a lot of that slowness, because that slowness is effectively and energetically the validation point in your own sense of stability, right? Because that's that moment of saying, like, this is a type of work where it's like you can't move slow enough, because if the point is to remove that energetic reactivity point, then yeah, like in a way, the slowness is the validation that you're not coming into that state of something being as energetically difficult as or reactive as you may have expected or intended. And these energies are doing this work, recognizing that you're navigating spaces and places that are typically triggering. So the conscientiousness is one that is almost required in that way to be able to feel that stability and support as you go forward. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is the energy that is coming into divine union, this is that moment of holding an energetic wound for another, holding that energetic wound with the mindfulness of how someone would prefer it be held, but also with the conscientiousness or the hope and aspiration that you'll be able to do something different with it later. And I need to stress this is not energy that's moving forward contingent on that level or degree of energetic healing occurring, right? But it's almost like the thought is in the head, the consideration point, but from a place of energetic compassion. Why? Because what happens when we see someone holding something that hurts? There's always that moment we say, like, I hope we can heal that. Like, I hope we can find a way to energetically heal that, right? But that's happening on each other's timelines. It's happening in, like, when you are energetically ready. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation. That modality of recognizing and amplifying, looking back on something with that new perspective, that feels to a certain extent like it creates that ability of starting a new energetic cycle starting here. A lot of conscientiousness, a lot of trepidation. But even so, we see that energy, the reason that there's so much conscientiousness coming into play there is wanting to take that approach that feels like it is energetically supported, wanting to take that work in such a way that feels like it is energetically methodical, wanting to do that to such an extent that there's a lot of conscientiousness that's potentially either coming in the new energetic connections, energy that's finding each other on that healing journey. And they're moving very, like they're doing a lot of new work here. They're doing something in a way that they haven't done it before. What do we do when we haven't done something before in the way that we typically would? We move very conscientiously. Whereas for a lot of this energy, if this is energy where you're healing something, this is that moment of taking that wait and see approach, seeing the signs of something that can actually change, not something returning in the way that it was, but seeing that sign of something or someone who has been able to come into that place, looking at something, being able to say, I see the fact that someone recognizes that there's something here that can be adjusted, that allows for that sense of a new pathway opening up. But even so, in that moment, moving with a lot of energetic care and caution to see if the words match the action. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Moon card in combination with our Devil card in its reversal. We like seeing those two cards together. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Magician in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now in separation. This is why the energy, even if there are new energetic connections forming here, if there's new pathways that are opening up, what we're effectively seeing to a certain extent is for a lot of that energy, like this is the energy that's moving very methodically for the sense and the sake of not wanting to be energetically misunderstood, right? We saw and we recognize that to a certain degree. For a lot of, and it's going to have a different impact depending on whether you align to masculine or feminine energy. Bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Why? Because feminine energy, we see even now, if feminine energy is looking back on the past with new clarity, potentially taking a wound that they had within and they've externalized it and moved it from without, feeling a lot of frustration or anger in something that they've moved from without, that feels like a different energetic lesson. That is the moment of the feminine trying to move from that sense or space of energetic caution, not wanting to repeat the past, the lessons of the past, wanting to be in that state or space of, again, energetically trying to build forth into the energetic equivalent of divine union, right? And so that's a lot of the feminine energy being very energetically discerning in terms of identifying whether they feel like a lot of the masculine energy that's coming towards them right now, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. If the energy is truly in energetic alignment, if they're seeing those signs of an energy that is truly in alignment with their own pathwork and their own purpose, and the feminine energy navigating so in a way with some sense of energetic trepidation, trying to be mindful of someone who's truly on that energetic healing journey. While for masculine, this is masculine that's potentially on that energetic healing journey, and they're almost coming towards the feminine being like, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I don't want you to misplace me. I don't want you to feel like I am some of that energy that you're trying to be conscientious of or moving away from to a certain extent. I want you to understand and recognize that I am being authentically my true self. Right? So there's a lot of that work that we see here that's happening in relationality to building trust. A lot of this path work having to do with trust right now for both masculine and feminine energy. And there's that moment, even now, there's that wait and see approach. So these are either new energetic connections that are forming in very tender spaces A lot of authenticity, a lot of honesty coming into play in relationality to what's been experienced and what you're energetically healing from. Or this is a lot of energy right now that's coming into some path work of restoration. When I say restoration, I need to stress this. I don't mean energy coming back together and saying, like, let's give it another go and nothing has changed. This is energy that's able to approach one another and someone saying, I can take accountability for what I can see was wrong. My priorities have shifted. And when my priorities shift, I can look back at the past sense of self and I can be very articulate on what I see needed to be adjusted or adapted or changed. So that ability to see something and be able to facilitate that change is what is allowing some of that pathwork of restoration to occur. But even so, we see that there's that caution and that conscientiousness to try to validate whether that feels like it is authentic, if it feels like it's coming from a place of understanding, because understanding is one thing, activating is another, like whether those words can be put into energetic action. Continuing to get clarification for the energy coming into divine union frequency, this is that moment, I have to say, it feels very vulnerable, right? Like we're seeing a lot of the energy coming into divine union frequency. This is not that moment that you're not feeling potentially a little energetically triggered. But your own ability not to allow yourself to be energetically triggered, your own ability to identify what feels like it is energetically triggering within you and recognize your own doubts and your own fears at the time of experiencing them. This is almost like what we see is happening right now in relationality to a lot of the energy entering the divine union frequency, because I can see that a lot of this energy coming into that space, you can almost feel like I've never been this vulnerable with someone, right? I've never navigated in this way. I've never been this energetically honest, and it can feel like even that moment, especially when we're holding wounds, it can feel a little energetically triggering. It can make us doubt ourselves, right? But what is that energy doing right now in relationality to being able to move forward? You're building forth in that sense of confidence. And how is the energy building forth in the sense of confidence? The energy building forth in the sense of confidence here is almost reminding themselves and saying, if I'm feeling the uncertainty of something, if I'm feeling the anxiety of something, is that because there's something that I'm truly energetically afraid of here? Or is that because I'm experiencing something that I've never experienced before, right? And that ability not to experience something that you haven't experienced before, but not allow yourself to become energetically triggered. Like almost allowing yourself to just feel that uncertainty. That is that moment that you're almost able to inhabit two spaces at once, which is, I don't know what is going to occur, but I'm also allowing myself the possibility of moving into that space or place of energetically healing, right? That is almost the energy that is like fighting their own lack of confidence, their own anxiety, by reaffirming their own energetic commitment. And what do we do to reaffirm our own energetic commitment when we're moving forward in a way and we don't know what to expect? We abandon, we let go of the energetic outcome. Because when we let go of the energetic outcome, we say and affirm to ourselves, I would do this anyway. I would do this anyway. This is how I energetically move. So we see even now a lot of the energy coming into the divine union frequency, almost building into their own sense of energetic confidence in that way, because they're not moving forward into a direction that they know. They're not saying, I'm going in this way because I know I've experienced this before and I know that it feels energetically safe. They're taking that moment and saying, I'm moving in this way because that is the way I would move anyway. I'm allowing that intentionality of purpose to guide me. I'm allowing my path work to lead me forward in this direction. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is that same energetic equivalent, that same energetic feeling, that same anxiety and uncertainty potentially rising up to the surface today. And what is that moment that allows for that breathing through? That moment of one saying to oneself, I would move in this way anyway. And this is what's interesting. Listen to this. Because what's happening for the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, this is the energy that's almost saying, and this is what's really intriguing. For the energy that's in the heart of the divine union frequency, the work doing this is almost this energy saying, this is a place I've had anxiety in moving towards. This is a place or space that I felt anxiety and fear or concern. But what did we say? The energetic exception for the rule. The trust, the faith in the counterpart, not the leaning on the counterpart, but the faith and the trust amplifies that ability of building forth in that space of energetic confidence, because that is that moment that, again, is the expression for the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, and saying, this is the space that I would usually step backwards, but for you, I can energetically step forward, right? That is that moment that almost feels like that sense of saying, like, for you, I can. For you, I will. And so that's the energy right now that's in the divine union frequency that's almost pushing forward. Not being energetically forced to do so, but doing so with that energetic confidence, because that's them coming into their highest alignment of self, feeling that sense of energetic support of the counterpart as they do so. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Devil card in its reversal in combination with our Ace of Swords in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Two of Wands. What occurs in those moments when we accept, we accept the unknown, when we accept the uncertainty, when we allow that to be that moment? That's that moment that, in a way, we're amplifying that sense of overcoming our own energetic fears, our own doubts. And it's not, and look, whenever we do this, these unhealthy coping mechanisms, these bad modalities of thoughts, it's not that they go away. It's not that they go away. You're never on a healing journey and all of those things just, go like, oh, I just went on a healing journey and then I didn't have another bad thought. I didn't have a moment of self-doubt ever again. It's amazing. It just poof, they just don't, no. It's that ability of not letting them override the system. It's that moment of just allowing them to come through and pass away, pass on. Just letting that energetic car drive by, having that moment of just having them pass through and just being like, there it goes, right? Because that's that moment. Even now, what did we say that these energies are doing right now in the heart of the divine union frequency? They're navigating through their own fears. They're navigating through their own doubts. They're doing that work of energetic surrender to a certain extent. And it's not easy. It's not easy because these are the spaces I told you. That's that clutch fist. These are the spaces and places they've been holding on to, really tightly, right? Really tightly. So that ability to, I told you, the moment that you can just let it go, doing nothing, not letting that be a moment of holding tight, that moment where you can just let go and let it flow to a certain extent, that is that moment, that is that point that we even see it may potentially be leading to a lot of breakthroughs in energetic communication right now, specifically and distinctly due to the fact that we see here energetically that ability to even I'm even seeing here, even places or spaces where someone may have had a hard time articulating, even just talking about something, that's that moment that just just creates that easement point, because it's that moment of saying, I can do it. You can have that moment of just easement. So we see even now that a lot of the energy doing this work in the divine union frequency, even the ability to navigate and to talk about something, is creating that sense of energetic release. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into the divine union frequency, a lot of the energy coming into the divine union frequency right now, this is a lot of that modality that we're seeing to a certain extent that feels the ability or the asset. This is what's interesting. The energy coming into divine union frequency isn't doing this work, but they're seeing the possibility and potential of doing it someday. They're seeing that moment where they're holding on to something, but they're seeing the care and gentleness through which another is holding it and saying, you know what? I might be able to heal that someday. I'm already feeling like something here is being energetically healed, because that's that moment where, again, you're experiencing something. You're showing someone an energetic wound, and instead of them getting reactive, instead of them taking it personally, them saying that sense of conscientiousness and saying, I will take care of that. I'm not only going to take care of it, I'm going to take care of it in the way that I know you would like me to take care of it. That is that moment that feels like that expression of amplification of purpose and path work, because that's that moment that feels energetically like that sense of saying, like that's building into that sense of security. This is energy that's building into a sense of trust in the other that they haven't necessarily experienced before. And that ability to do so is like taking a bit of that wait and see approach, much like the energy in separation, because what's happening in separation right now? New connections, new opportunities, new possibilities opening up. All with this sense of, again, a lot of vulnerability in whatever these new communications are. These are either new energetic connections that are coming from a place of deep energetic authenticity, or these are restorational paths where it's not just the same energetic conversation. It's someone that's giving that articulation point and having truly been able to come into a point of observation in terms of taking accountability and recognizing the pathwork forward. These are like energies presenting paths to one another. So we see even now, that's not energy that's going like, woo, and just like going on those journeys. But this is that moment of feeling some kind of like, positive, productive pathwork here that is allowing for that moment of feeling something and seeing that sense of saying something here feels energetically different. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Ace of Swords in its reversal in combination with our Four of Wands in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Beautiful. We've got here our Two of Cups in its upright. Masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation. I just see that there's a lot of new potential energetic connections that are potentially occurring right now. There's pathwork here, productivity. But again, how is that pathwork of productivity coming forth right now? Accepting the past, accepting the direction that wasn't working, coming into that moment of healing that allows for the new opportunity of what does. Right? I told you a lot of this energy over the last few days has just been coming into that point of energetic acceptance, right? For a lot of the feminine energy, being able to move something outside of the self, to almost look at something and say, I've facilitated as much as I can around something. That is that moment of saying, like, this isn't something that was energetically for me. And that's how the feminine energy is healing something here, right? Being able to articulate that. While for masculine energy, feeling some kind of energetic regret from the past and saying, I wish I could have done something energetically different. These energies having that moment of conscientiousness, of understanding. They're taking those energetic lessons, the accountability moment, and taking that, and they're fostering and building upon new energetic connections because they're letting those experiences set the energetic standard for what they are seeking going forward. So this is either connections, these are new connections that are forming right now that are both finding themselves in the same alignment on that pathwork, or these are energies that are coming into some pathwork of restoration from a moment of being able to energetically observe what they could have done differently and being able to take the energetic accountability for it. While for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now, this is the energetic equivalent of being of having that uncertainty moment, because this could be a moment that you may be looking back at past experiences and saying, I've never had this before. I don't know what's coming because I've never gone this far energetically before. Like a lot of this energy, almost feeling that sense. If you've gone on the healing journey and you're healing with someone, you're potentially reaching that moment of connection with someone that you're saying, I don't know what comes after this because I've never experienced this before, right? But even here, that is the energetic commitment, because that is the affirmation that we see that those energies, they're not running from that. They're not getting triggered from that. They're not moving in the opposite direction for fear of the unknown. They're holding each other's hands deep within that process. They're building deeper into the heart of the divine union frequency. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is already in the heart of the divine union frequency, that ability to forge deeper into it, that ability to navigate something that you may have felt like was on the shelf for a while, being able to address some kind of past wound, past work, hurt, being able to do that level or degree of healing. This is that moment that feels like the same expression of experience, being like, we haven't tackled this or navigated this before, but I feel that sense of being able to do something that I would typically not be able to do within the self because of the companionate energy that is beside me. And these energies are not pulling each other along on that path. They are invested equally in that energetic journey. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Four of Wands in its reversal in combination with our Fool card in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Seven of Wands. It's not easy. Did someone tell you the healing journey was going to be easy? It's not easy. It's difficult. It's difficult. Right? Because it's that moment of continually, perpetually challenging yourself to a certain extent, right? That's that moment that we almost see a lot of this energy. And I have to say, it's a little bit of that. I told you, for the energy in the divine union frequency right now, it's a little bit of that start and stop, if you will. Because for that energy, that ability to see something here, that ability to energetically feel something, that ability to identify one's own, it requires a lot of energetic steadiness to a certain extent, because it requires that ability to identify and recognize the self between, and I have to stress this, okay, because this is important, the difference energetically between challenging oneself, feeling like you want to move in an energetic direction that you feel is in alignment with you, moving into that highest version of self, okay? Versus feeling the energetic equivalent of being pulled in a direction that you don't want to go into, right? This is that nuance. That is why the understanding of self is so vital and important when you do work of this magnitude, because the intrinsic nature of pushing oneself has to come from the self of energetic self-determination. Right? That ability to identify and feel that sense of moving in that direction because it brings you closer to yourself is what energetically protects you between pushing through your own energetic limitations, your own energetic boundaries, versus being pulled into path work that feels like it isn't energetically in alignment to you. So we see even now that the energetic ability to recognize and identify that type of differentiation, that ability to see that ability to navigate in that way, that is what is allowing these energies right now to do so, because these are the energies that feel that sense of identifying and saying, that ability to encourage one another, that ability to move each other forward is one that feels like you're energetically ready for that challenge, if you will. You're welcoming that energetic challenge, as opposed to being into that state or space wherein you potentially feel that sense of not moving and in a way, what is this energy doing right now in the heart of the divine union frequency? This is the energy overcoming their own doubts and fears and saying, I want to push myself in this capacity, because that is the sense of saying, I don't want to energetically block my own blessings. I want to come into that state or space of doing something in a way that I know that that is what I aspire to do. And I'm willing to do that hard work to do it. While for masculine and feminine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, for the energy that is coming into divine union, the energy that's going through that process at the same time as the energy in the heart of the divine union, this is that moment of not potentially energetically pushing, right? This is that moment that we almost see that the energy coming into divine union is identifying and recognizing the blockages in the other that may sometimes get in their own way. Seeing and observing that, right? And what happens in those moments that we see something in the other that we want to be able to help with. And not for that sake, I need to stress this, not in that sake or in that state wherein we want to change the other for the sense or the sake of our own self, but coming into that point of seeing the highest version of self that one aspires and desires to. That is that moment that builds that sense of conscientiousness. And especially if these are spaces or places where someone is holding an energetic wound. This is that moment that you're almost holding the energetic wound for the other and saying, I will hold this forever. For you, I will always be willing to hold this. But I hope one day we can energetically heal it, right? So we see even now that for a lot of that energy, that mindfulness, almost like, again, allows for that energetic possibility. And even for someone seeing someone holding it in that way, it creates that spark of possibility on the horizon. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in separation, this is the energy taking that leap of faith in separation. And this is energy that, like, again, is probably not even looking at themselves as being in separation so much as being energetically autonomous to a certain degree, because this is energy that does not want to energetically go back to something. This is energy that is committing on the pathwork of going forward, masculine and feminine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, because they're being energetically mindful of what feels like it is in alignment on their own path. And we see that that's hard, because some of that feels like even now you're carving out some of that terrain. You're having to carve that path out for yourself. But that is the energy that is doing that work and saying, I know what it is that I aspire and desire. And I know that the energy that's in alignment with me is doing that same energetic work. And that focus, that commitment, and saying, I know that the energy that I'm seeking is in that direction. And that's either the energy that's committed to doing that work, that's working on their own self, that can come into that space of healing, or that's energy that is going to be in the direction that I am working towards. That is the energy that feels the affirmation of continuing forward, either, again, on that pathwork of energetic restoration and identifying something that you can come into a correction point on, or building upon those new energetic connections going forward. Continuing to get clarification on these cards between our Magician in its reversal in combination with our Two of Wands in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Eight of Cups in its upright. It's hard. It's energetically painful. Like, there's moments here, there's still a lot of energetic grief that is potentially being held around some circumstances and situations. I need to say, a lot of this pathwork is pathwork of energetic correction, right? Like, that is the sense of it. That is the state of it. Like, that is the ability of recognizing and identifying things here. And we see even now that for a lot of that energy in separation, that ability to navigate forward to a certain extent, it is that moment of, again, working through your own insecurities, working through your own doubts, working through your own fears, not letting them go entirely, but proceeding forward and coming into that point of energetic acceptance, if you will. For masculine and feminine, a little bit of a different journey. For masculine energy, more of that moment of potentially feeling, if your priorities have changed here, if you're looking back and you're feeling some kind of energetic regret, that's potentially because you're coming into that state of having new energetic priorities that set that pathwork forward to you to a certain degree. And we see even now, like, a lot of that work for masculine has to do with looking towards the past and almost saying, is that a place or space that you're energetically releasing? Or is that a place or space that you're trying to build towards, right? Because when masculine energy looks back on things with energetic regret, that is that moment that feels like that amplification of having or being able to do something energetically different, that always creates that opportunity of looking and saying, am I going to go back in that direction and try to heal something? Or am I going to take that as an energetic lesson going forward? While for feminine energy, this is more of that pathwork that we're seeing that is allowing you to feel like you're energetically healing from something. That for some of the feminine energy right now, the ability of looking towards, again, potentially even a masculine energy that you had hoped like would energetically meet you in some capacity, and you feel like you weren't on the same pathwork. That is the feminine that's almost reaffirming their own energetic commitment and saying, I am moving in the direction of the path that I'm choosing. Knowing and I'm believing that the masculine energy, knowing firmly that the healed masculine energy will want the same things that you want. It won't feel like you have to force them in that path. You won't have to force them on that direction. You'll just find them on the path as you move towards it. So we see even now, this is the feminine and masculine energy coming into that point of energetic trepidation, potentially even new energetic connections. And a lot of that articulation on what's building upon those new communications and experiences has to do with articulating either how you've energetically changed or what you're energetically healing from. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now for masculine and feminine energy coming into divine union right now. This is that energetic equivalent of not knowing what continues forward from this point. Because we're really seeing that if these are moments that you're overcoming your own doubts and fears, you're pushing forward beyond that moment. There's that moment that feels like that uncertainty, that unknowing about what's on that horizon point. But what is occurring with that energy? This is that energetic equivalent that almost feels like, again, conquering your own energetic fears by how? Communicating on them, right? Is this energy that's building into that state or space by like reacting from that point of energetic doubt or from that point of energetic fear? No. This is the energy that proceeds almost to communicate and articulate upon those doubts and those fears. Speaking, building an energetic bridge through their own doubts of the self. And what is the energy receiving as they do so? That affirmation. That reminder that they're not energetically alone experiencing that. Because the minute that we don't act upon our anxieties and fears, but instead we articulate on them, we immediately leave the opportunity to be energetically supported at that moment. And so we see even now that for a lot of the energy doing that work, it feels very much like that moment that even in those places and spaces that you feel uncertainty, you're not energetically alone in that. You build that energetic bridge through it. While for masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, this is the energetic equivalent of working through those spaces and places that you couldn't necessarily move towards in the past. This is that energetic equivalent if these are places that you are overcoming your own doubts and your own fears, even potentially some of these past wounds. These are moments or observational points that we see that same energetic equivalent is there, having those doubts and those fears, but then immediately feeling that sense of energetic encouragement, immediately feeling that sense of energetic opportunity coming into play, immediately feeling that sense of being able to navigate forward in a way that you wouldn't typically have done before, specifically due not leaning energetically on the counterpart energy, but feeling that amplification point in being able to push forward in a way beyond what you could have due to the moment of being able to energetically connect with another connection, like with the counterpart energy. Having those moments, having those observational points, being able to feel that you have that energetic support, like that's like a lot of that energetic push that is helping a lot of energy right now overcoming their own doubts and fears in terms of doing a lot of that work in energetically healing something that you may have been carrying for a long period of time. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Two of Wands in combination with our Two of Cups. Double two cards today. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Page of Wands in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy that is in the divine union frequency. What is occurring right now? A lot of healing of childhood wounds. A lot of inner child healing coming to the surface right now. A lot of that energetic equivalent, if you will, in relationality to potentially navigating spaces and places that you've been holding on to something for quite a long time, potentially even since childhood. Like this is unpacking some of those deeper childhood traumas or those deeper childhood wounds to a certain extent. And we see even now that's hard, right? Because that point, that necessary moment where that unhealed inner child wants to come to the surface may have blocked or prevented you from being able to do that work in the past. But we see even now, these are the energies that can do that type of work. Why? Because it's not just the fact that you have that unhealed inner child within you. It's that you feel safe. Your unhealed inner child feels safe with the counterpart energy. It's not just that idea of someone, of building for yourself that sense of saying, would I feel energetically safe with that person? It's almost that moment of feeling that sense of saying, my unhealed inner child also feels safe with you. Like, while for masculine and feminine energy right now, coming into divine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, what is the energy doing right now that's coming into divine union? You are seeing each other's unhealed inner child for the first time, potentially even that part of yourself that you don't typically show others. Because what happens when we move into the act of intimacy, we start seeing those parts of the self that we don't often show those around us. So we see even now for the energy meeting, like this is energy coming into divine union, starting to meet each other's unhealed inner children for the first time. And are these energies reacting? Are these spaces or places where those unhealed children, like inner children, have the reins? No. This is almost the energy that's like introducing each other to one another's unhealed inner children. Like being like, yeah, this is, no, I've been like this since I've got this thing about this. I do this, like those little, I'm like telling each other, I've got these triggers. If you do this, I'm going to, like my unhealed inner child's going to pop out. My unhealed inner child's going to pop out and try to do this, right? That ability of identifying that to a certain extent, that even here is building the bridge, because that's starting to say, like, you're learning about that. You're learning about that inner child. You're learning about that inner child. And that ability to learn about that inner child creates that state or space wherein you're able to foster that positive energetic connection, because that's that moment that you're starting to feel and introduce the safety of the inner child to the other, that effectually will hopefully allow you to help facilitate the healing of that even further on the journey. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is in separation, this is a lot of new energetic connections that are coming from a state of deep authenticity, like deep, like trying to really work on building forth from a place of deep energetic honesty. And that ability to do so is almost that moment of looking towards the other and saying, you know, I want to see, like, I want you to see as close an approximation of who I am as I truly am. Because how else can we know if we're going to be a viable energetic connection if we don't do so? If I can't show you, if I can't feel energetically safe with you, if we're in that space or state, like this is the energy that's almost going to great length right now, being as articulate as possible about who they are to one another. Because that is that moment of almost trying to build forth in that way, like navigating and seeing if there's that energetic possibility in coming into that point of healing. These are like energies, I'm telling you, these are energies that are meeting each other on the healing journey. And these energies meeting each other on the healing journey, like it's almost that moment, like the nomenclature feels the same, that articulation point, that work that you're doing to a certain extent is what's allowing for that energetic breakthrough. Or again, this is path work of restoration where someone is able to come towards the other and say, I was acting like a child. Right? Like a little bit of that being like, I was acting like a child. Like this could be a lot of the energy saying like, I am sorry. The last time you saw me, I was letting that unhealed inner child have the reins. So this is the energy that's, again, either letting that modality come to the surface in one way or another, taking the energetic accountability for the unhealed inner child that is either allowing for the ability to heal energetic connections at this time or fostering new ones from a place of clarity and authenticity. Continuing between our 2 of Wands and its upright and our 7 of Wands. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our High Priestess energy. And we love this because you might recognize this was in its reversal. This was in its reversal, I believe, just yesterday. We often see this energy popping up in its reversal at times, especially when the feminine energy is doubting themselves. But bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Masculine and feminine energy right now in separation. This is the feminine energy. I have to say what's really beautiful about this, a lot of this feminine energy, not trying to put on some kind of energetic facade right now in relationality to meeting in new energetic connections or healing or repairing old ones. Because this is simply the feminine energy that, again, isn't is navigating or coming from the highest version of self, right? This isn't the feminine energy trying to put on some kind of energetic mask or facade to try to like align with the masculine. This is the feminine also going on that journey and saying, why would I put on a facade that I think will be malleable or adaptable or pleasing to the masculine? Because that just says that I would have to energetically put on that facade interminably to be able to facilitate connection with masculine. So this is almost feminine energy. I'm telling you, doing this work on the self that feels like it is the gift that goes forward, because that's the feminine energy saying, I'm not going to try to become something that I'm not becoming. I'm just going to be more of myself to be able to find the energetic equivalent that desires me in my greatest version of self. That's the feminine energy saying, like, I want to just become my highest version of self so I can find alignment with the person that aspires and desires to be with me in that context, right? And that's the feminine maintaining that potentially in a lot of the energetic connections that are happening right now, even if these are new energetic connections or approaching something from the past with a heightened degree of honesty and clarity. While for masculine energy, this is the same energetic work to a certain extent. This is masculine energy that says to themselves, if I want the energy of an authentic feminine, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, that what it feels most aligned to, then I better get to being authentic. The feminine acts as a mirror to me. The feminine creates that reflection point. What I want in the feminine, I must embody. Because I can't energetically fake it. Because feminine can kind of see when it's being energetically faked. This is the feminine almost saying to themselves and saying, I need to become my highest version of self. Because when I become my highest version of self, I recognize I become in alignment with my highest version of feminine. Right? And that's this is like the masculine energy in a way. And I don't want to say that this is masculine energy doing this for the purpose of the feminine, right? This isn't a masculine trying to change to match the feminine. This is the masculine looking towards the feminine from a place of appreciation and saying, I want to move towards that divine feminine energy because that ability to become that is me becoming what I desire, right? That is that gift, that energetic gift that feels harmonious, because that is that moment that feels like you are embodying the experience of the thing that you desire, right? So even now we see that a lot of the masculine energy feeling like that pathwork of purpose to a certain extent. And that is either creating, again, the prioritization shifts that are occurring in some places right now in relationality to, if this is masculine energy, looking back and feeling like your priorities have changed, this may be a lot of that prioritization in relationality to what you're energetically seeking with and from feminine at this time. Or this is masculine energy that's taking a lot of those lessons of the past self and letting it amplify in relationality to the work that you're doing in the present to be able to be in like deep energetic alignment with feminine. So we see even now a lot of this energy in separation, either in restoration or new energetic connection, coming from a place of deep authenticity and healing. While as for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into divine union, that energetic equivalent, if you will, that work of doing so, this is that moment that almost builds that sense. And I even see now, like, this is why sometimes when we start moving towards the things that we aspire and desire, we start feeling that anxiety. Like we start feeling that fear, that frustration, because that's that amplification of what feels like it becomes energetically precious, right? If this is masculine energy to a certain degree, building forth in a state or space wherein, again, they feel like they can be their most authentic self to the feminine. This is that masculine energy that's almost building and feeling like that amplification of wanting to do more, of feeling that sense of strength, feeling that sense of energetic confidence, because this is almost the masculine energy that like is not, again, it's not that they wouldn't do this for your own self, but it almost feels like it creates that it almost like increases your own motivation, because it's not that someone's asking you to do it, but that it's like you desire to do it to continue to foster and build upon that connection with feminine, right? That's that moment of like energetic encouragement, if you will. While for feminine energy right now, that modality of, again, having the masculine energy, experience that sense of holding an energetic wound, if you will. Having that point of holding something for you, not reacting to it, not taking it personal, that you're carrying a wound in from outside the divine union frequency, but working to facilitate and heal it. That is also that moment to feminine that feels like that amplification in relationality to feeling that energetic security. Because that is that moment of feminine, feeling that sense of saying, like, this is a masculine that carries my wounds almost as they would carry their own, that works to energetically protect me in the way that they, not just in the way they hold me. They're not doing things, for my benefit. They're doing things in the way that they feel I would aspire and desire them to be done. They're carrying those wounds the way I would hope that they would hold them. So for both of these energies right now, feeling that alignment that creates that sense of trusting in that path work forward, even if it feels like there's those moments of doubting oneself along the way. While for masculine and feminine energy in the heart of the divine union frequency right now, that modality or that ability to do so, that is what is allowing you to navigate forward in spaces and places that usually would be triggering, that usually might be difficult. And that ability to observe the self and feel that energetic confidence, to almost see one's own weaknesses or limitations, that is something that feels like it's being energetically amplified right now for a lot of the energy in the heart of the divine union frequency, because it's that same energetic equivalent. The energy feeling, it's like, it's not that you're not feeling the same doubts and fears of the past, but it's being amplified and made more precise in relationality to your energetic focus, right? That sense of encouragement that feels like the sense of not leaning on someone and saying, I can only do this with you, but almost feeling that sense and saying, I can do this because of you. I can do this for you, but not doing it for you as in moving off of your path work, but almost saying your encouragement, your energetic support, like that gives me that motivation to push forward in that way. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Eight of Cups in combination with our Page of Wands and its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Wheel of Fortune in its reversal. So a little bit of energetic stillness at this time, right? But this energetic stillness isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because again, what did we say was important when you're navigating through spaces or places when there's inner child wounds that are being held? What is the amplification of something that has come into a point of correction? What does the inner child do? The unhealed inner child reacts, right? The unhealed inner child reacts. So again, what is that sign? What is that pathwork of purpose here? What is that success metric in being able to navigate something in such a way that would typically create a reactivity point? That moment of not allowing yourself to feel like that reactivity point from the unhealed inner child is the metric for success. That is that moment that feels to a certain extent like the energetic breakthrough, because that is that moment of saying I'm not reacting the way I typically would. I'm not doing something the way I typically would do. It's not creating that sense of the same thing. That moment of pause, that moment of stillness, being able to feel that and be like, doesn't do that anymore. That feels like that validation of energetic healing. While for masculine and feminine energy that is coming into divine union right now, that energetic equivalent of seeing something, feeling like discovering each other's unhealed inner child, finding those moments, building into the heart of intimacy, and almost finding those unhealed inner child parts that you don't typically show others. That is that moment. It's because these energies aren't reactive in that unhealed inner child. They're able to articulate on them. They've learned, again, how to navigate a certain level or degree of energetic control around them. And that's that moment that feels like it builds that sense of safety and security for the other, because it's not that you're energetically perfect. It's that you know one's own self enough to identify and recognize when those unhealed inner child wounds rise to the surface, that you are able to put a stop to it within the self. And that's that moment that almost creates that sense of feeling like anything is energetically possible at that point, because there's that point of observing that there's not going to be that level or degree of reactivity. While for masculine and feminine energy that is in separation, this is a lot of the energy taking a wait and see approach, because a lot of energy right now is making new energetic connections. Potentially even seeing a lot of energy right now that is very much on the same energetic journey. And even so, what do we see happens in those moments when energy is on a healing journey? There's a lot of slowness that comes into play. A lot of like bringing slowness to a circumstance or situation, because that is the amplification point of, again, not wanting to rush forward, wanting to be very energetically mindful that you're on the same path work is something that takes a little bit of time, a little bit of care. And this is energy that's either healing from spaces or places where they feel like they rushed into the direction that was not necessarily for them, or energy that's working very hard not to to prioritize in such a way that they're not letting that reactivity point drive them forward into spaces and places that aren't in alignment to them. So that energy is facilitating a lot of slowness as they energetically build these connections. It's like campfire energy. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Page of Wands in combination with our Queen, our High Priestess. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now. This is why, because a lot of this energy right now is being very mindful, even in separation right now, of what energetically feels like unhealed karmic connections, right? There's a lot of the energy right now that's just navigating forward in that point. And so even now, this is either the energy that's coming into the divine, that's in separation right now, that's almost articulating and building upon, almost talking about the experiences of unhealed karmic connections from the past. And also, again, what are they doing in these moments? They're identifying the difference between what was within them to heal, where they could have taken accountability, versus what was something that they experienced outside of the self. I'm telling you, location right now, that is helping navigate and facilitate that energetic feeling of coming into alignment. For feminine, seeing a masculine that's able to articulate in this way, that moment or degree of self-referentialness to such an extent that one can see one's own weaknesses and identify the difference between what was within one's own power to change versus what was outside of the self that was experienced. That's the feminine utilizing the pathwork of discernment in trying to utilize the new energetic connections that feel like they're truly for them, because that would be indications of masculine energy that's also on a healing journey. Whereas masculine energy right now is doing a lot of that work in relationality to working to energetically heal the unhealed inner child wounds, not coming into a state of high reactivity, almost unpacking anything that feels like it creates that reactivity point in them, even potentially unpacking where it came from in the childhood, all to be able to facilitate and heal it within the self, to be able to foster a better energetic connection with feminine going forward. And this is either masculine energy that's working towards feminine, literally articulating upon this journey right now towards new energetic connections with feminine, or this is masculine energy that is trying to restore an energetic connection with the feminine in this modality by articulating and identifying what they feel like they have changed in relationality to what they understand may have created the unhealed karmic connection. While it's for masculine and feminine energy right now that is coming into the divine union frequency, this is feeling the equivalent of having to hold the bag on whatever caused those injuries in the first place. You come into the divine union frequency, it's like you don't come in unscathed. These are the energies that are holding those inner child wounds. And what's happening here is this is almost like a handoff, handing each other those unhealed inner child wounds, and feeling that sense of security and safety and protection in relationality, to saying, it's not just the fact that I'm giving you this. I know and I trust how you will do it, what you will do with it, and how you will navigate it. Right? That's that moment that we almost say to each other in relationality to connection and saying, I trust your judgment. It's not just that I trust you, I trust your energetic judgment. While for masculine and feminine energy, In the heart of the divine union frequency, the same work that's happening just at a deeper level, because these are even navigating spaces and places that you would typically not discover or typically not go, or potentially even areas that you've always stayed a little energetically closed off on. But here we see that this is that modality or that path work that you're almost forging forward in those places that you would typically be more trepidatious to go, because of that sense of security and stability and trust that you've built in relationality to the energetic connection. Final card in today's spread between our Wheel of Fortune in its reversal in combination with our Six of Cups in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Emperor in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now in the divine union frequency. This is difficult. This is hard work. This is difficult energetic stuff. It can feel very energetically triggering. I'm going to say it's a little bit more difficult today energetically, potentially, for the masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Specifically because what we're effectively seeing to a certain extent right now is that moment or that modality wherein we're recognizing that we're like, look, we're just navigating these inner child wounds. We're going through these hurdles. These are wounds that have been carried for a long time. That I'm actually seeing here that from the masculine energy, some of these wounds that you're navigating, you've been carrying for a long time. You're like unpacking a lot of the stuff that came from like places and spaces way in the past. So we see even now, doing a little bit of that work, it can feel very vulnerable, right? Because this is almost that moment, like what happens with the masculine energy that tries to unpack like inner child wounds. It makes you feel like a child, right? It makes you feel like you're back there. It makes you feel like you're back in that space. It doesn't make you feel energetically strong. And a lot of the masculine energy trying to, come into that point of strength in that moment, it feels very counter to like what you're trying to navigate to a certain extent, because it almost feels like that moment that you're dealing even with the sense of like allowing yourself to energetically feel like that, because some of the masculine energy's abandonment wound is like creating this like hard candy shell around the unhealed inner child, right? Like that's what a lot of the masculine energy works through. Like I felt very wounded, so I made this really big, strong thing to like block that wounded inner child. So we see even now that for a lot of the masculine, feeling like that energetic act of dismantling that, it can feel very difficult. It can feel very vulnerable. But what's happening in the heart of the energetic union of divine masculine and feminine in the divine union frequency is masculine feeling that energetic trust of a feminine. What happens when the masculine can trust the feminine? Masculine's almost saying, like, I can do this for no one else but with you, right? Because that is that moment of really building into the heart of trust, which for the masculine feels like that ability to take one's armor off and feel truly energetically safe, seen, and supported. While for feminine energy right now in the heart of the divine union frequency, this ability to energetically trust oneself, this ability to energetically not feel vulnerable, that ability in really coming into your own sense of trust in spaces and places wherein you may have felt the opposite. You were told to be softer. You were told, and potentially with a lot of the inner childhood wounds, you couldn't, to be softer, to be smaller, right? For the feminine energy, how does the feminine energy heal their inner child wounds? Saying, I'm not going to get smaller. I don't have to get smaller. I have to be more myself. The wound was formed when someone said, stop being yourself. Stop being yourself. Stop being yourself. Fit in this box. And what did the feminine do? The feminine got smaller. The masculine, how did the masculine protect the inner child wound? The masculine, I got really big to protect myself. What did the feminine do to heal the unhealed inner child? I got really small to protect myself. What are these energies doing right now to heal these spaces and places? Masculine, learning it's okay to get small. Learning it's okay to be small. Learning it's safe to be small. Feminine, learning it's okay to be themselves. Learning it's okay to be themselves. Both of these energies healing each other by allowing that sense of saying it's safe to do so. It's not that you don't have to be in those spaces, but it's safe to be the other as well. masculine and feminine energy, you're seeing these spaces and places within the self. You're seeing those vulnerabilities. You're seeing that soft side. You're seeing that moment behind there. You're seeing those inklings of the inner child that created that state or space where you're seeing like where the like that protective element came to be, right? So we see even now, what is that energy doing? Is the energy like dinging that? Is the energy trying to like impact that? No, that is the energy holding space and saying, I see something. I see something in the other. I see something delightful in the other. And I hope one day to let them know that it is safe enough for them to bring that out. I hope one day to make that space where it can be safe enough for them to bring that forth. And that is that act of compassion that we have in holding space and navigating something the way someone aspires and desires that we hold it, but with the aspiration of healing something in a way so someone can come into their even more of the part of themselves that we truly love and see and admire, like that part of the self behind the facade, right? While for masculine and feminine energy right now, in separation, this is a lot of this act of energetic healing, a lot of new connections being made right now. And this is like fragile stuff. These are very authentic new potential connections that are happening, especially if these energies are meeting each other on the healing journey, because this is masculine doing everything they can not to put up that energetic facade, trying to find that pathwork of being as honest and expressive as feminine as possible. It's hard because it almost feels like to masculine, like you're going towards feminine without any armor on. For feminine, standing with your own pathwork and purpose, that is also hard because it feels like you're trying to embody this like sense of self that you aspire to. But what's important about this is that's not the feminine feeling like they're putting up a false sense of self. They're just trying to come into their own sense of self enough to feel the energetic confidence in doing so. Both of these energies, even in separation, trying to heal from those inner child wounds and encountering each other in the process. Or for the energy that's coming into restoration, this is that moment of the energetic accountability of the masculine that has to like look towards the feminine and say like, I was not in that space at the time and now I am. And being able to articulate upon it. Bottom of the deck. On this reading right now, we've got here our 10 of Swords in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. You know, the thing about this, it's so intriguing, is the fact, like, I know the retrograde's over, right? It's like, I want to laugh because, like, the retrograde's over. Why is everybody still pulling everything up? Because you know, I see that something about this particular Mercury retrograde, in particular, the combination of the Mercury retrograde with the combination of the eclipse energy, with the combination of the Scorpio full moon, it's not that the energy brought something up to the surface. It brought something back. It brought something back specifically with the aspiration and the desire of healing it. These aren't things that you want to put back in, is what I'm saying. These are things that like they come up and it's like now like that moment of doing something energetically with them. Almost being able to address them, being able to navigate forward on them. Some things energetically come up and you can't put them back down again, right? That's what we see almost happen to a certain extent in relationality to what happened during that process. There's a lot of stuff that got energetically unpacked here. And navigating forward from this point is almost that moment that feels almost like that point of saying like there's only the path forward. There's only the path forward here, right? There's no going backwards, right? So we see even now energetically, all of this energetic equivalent to a certain extent is occurring right now in relationality to that process. For masculine and feminine energy right now, in the heart of the divine union frequency, that is that moment that feels like that amplification of not wanting to put, like, that's the energy in the union, not putting something away where it's not supposed to be, just addressing it and taking care of it at that moment, like that moment of saying like let's just do it now, like let's just you know, let's not hold on to something that we could just go ahead and navigate forward on, right? While for masculine and feminine energy that's coming into divine union, this is that moment of potentially wanting to bring something up later right? Seeing something and being like, I know we're going to have to, like, there's going to be that moment of bringing something up later. But again, that's not that moment of saying, like, that is determinative on the partnership. But that's that moment of almost seeing something and saying, I'm holding on to something that I would like to address deeper at some other point. While for masculine and feminine energy in separation right now, this is a lot of that feeling of coming back, like revival. It's hard. It's painful. It's painful. Like there's a lot of starting a new energy for a lot of the energy in separation right now. But again, it's validating. It's vindicating. It feels like even now there's some pathwork of seeing something and feeling the valuation point of experiencing something and feeling like that there's some kind of change, positive change that's occurring. But it can also be energetically painful at that moment. So being able to like hold space for both of those energetic feelings, like that's a lot of the navigating of this right now. Like it's hard, but it's healing. It's hard, but it's healing. That is our daily collective read for today. I'd like to thank you guys so much for being here and experiencing it with me. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber name at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a 2-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing with me in these messages. And we will do this again tomorrow. A couple of notes before we close for today. If you haven't joined us already, I wanted to announce that, as I always do, that we have started our tarot education program called the Tarot Church over on my Substack, graystrega.substack.com. Each month we are doing a deep dive into a card around the tarot, looking at all of the nuances, symbology, history of those cards. Last month we focused on the Fool card. This month we will be focusing on the Magician. That next class will be on Wednesday, May 15th at 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. Eastern. All you need to do to become a part of that class program is become a paid subscriber to my Substack. Included in your subscription is not only access to the monthly classes, but also any recordings and course materials for the previous classes. So if you missed our first class, never fear, no you haven't. Also, you will have access to a one-on-one chat with me where you can ask me any questions in relation to what we are learning or any questions you may have on your own particular tarot journey. And if you become a founding member to my Substack, included in your 1-year subscription will also be a free 1-hour mentorship reading with me, wherein we will assess where you are on your own particular tarot journey, and I will give you indications on how I feel like you can best utilize the classes going forward, as well as any insights from spirit and relationality to your own path and journey. I really focused on building these classes in a way that they would be suitable for both the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. So I hope that you'll join us there, and thank you to everybody who already has. And even if you do not become a paid subscriber to my Substack, I would encourage you to become a free follower for me there to be able to stay up to date on any new offerings or events that we may have planned going forward. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing with me in these messages, and we will do this again tomorrow.